I'm genuinely honored to have some time to talk to my guest this week. He is a musician, he's an entrepreneur, he's a family man, and to me, just a pivotal part of my life. To be frank, you might know him from a multitude of musical projects like Electron and Conspirator, Star Kitchen, his DJ Brownie project, and even more recently, the Brownstein family band. You also might know him from his really important work with organizations like Headcount or Live Lesson Masters. But you'll notably know him and recognize him as the bass player and the singer from the Disco Biscuits. So please welcome Marc Brownstein.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here with you, Mike.
Yeah, it's been a long time coming to catch up and have a conversation like this. It's really cool that you're going to be on so early and you're going to be the first guest, because when I think about it, the trajectory of my life and my relationship with music, you've been such a pivotal part of that. I mean, the Biscuits were my first foray into jam music, into the festival scene. I was a 17-year-old kid, just got dragged to Camp Bisco by my friend's older brother, and little did I know that it was going to change my whole life. And I've had some beautiful relationships, and it helped me just start out on the journey of who I am now. So I appreciate, your place in my life and what you and the Biscuits have meant to it.
Yeah, and we appreciate your place on the rail. You know what I mean? It's like Mike was a stalwart of the rail for several years, and always bringing a lot of positive energy to the rail. And it's actually been kind of, I haven't seen you that much over the last couple of years, but when I did see you the last time, it was great to see what just enormous changes you made in your life from, when you got off of Biscuits tour to now. And it's in a kind of an inspiring journey to watch happen when somebody takes control of their health and then makes that the focus of everything in their life, and health is wealth. And what do we have outside of our bodies and our minds to take care of, right? Our families and our businesses and our
Mhm.
friends, right? But it all starts with your body and with your mind. And so, I'm sure that your journey, as I know from going through several kind of cycles of extreme healthful, exercise, eating, it's when you do that and you do it publicly, it has a huge impact on so many people. And I know that you have had that kind of an impact on the people in your community, as I had when I was training for a marathon, and all the other things that we do publicly these days. So
For
it's
sure.
great to
And
be here to chat.
yeah, man, I'm excited. A lot of people, I've been very fortunate to have that kind of relationship with all of it, and it's really been a beautiful way to give back to people that have given to me and be prevalent in a community that I cherish very much. I got to, you guys came to Boulder Theater recently, and I got to come to the two nights, the Friday, Saturday shows. And it was the first time that I've seen you guys in over 3 years. And it was so cool to walk in and see how excited you guys were and see how much fun you were having. And the crowd had shifted a little bit, but the presence on stage, it was so new and fresh, and it was so dope just to be like, you know what, it's been a while, but it feels good to be back, and it feels good to see. So many people are talking about you guys currently and how hot you are and all that. And I mean, I've been in the Biscuit scene for 12 years now, almost 13 years, since I was a young buck. And man, has it been cool to watch the the resurgence and the re excitement from the fan base. And Yeah, I had a really special time at those 2 shows. So it was really cool.
Appreciate that you were there. The experience that we had at set right before set break, I think it was on the first night,
Mhm.
where we had played the Saber Dance as the last song of the set, and the John and Aaron were playing some song from their musical in
Mhm.
there that I didn't even know the song. And so they started playing this song and it was classical and they were playing it in harmony and it was like obviously something. And
Right.
then John kept going back and forth between that and the Above the Waves melody, and then ultimately we landed down in Saber Dance, and we were basically playing three songs at the same time, and it was getting faster and more intense, and then we hit the Saber Dance. And nailed it, which is it's not an easy song,
Right.
and the eruption of the crowd at that moment was one of those moments in Boulder where there's 10 moments like that I can remember through our whole entire career where it was the kind of the energy in the crowd that was being sent back to us after we had just put the energy towards the crowd for 90 minutes. That it's like it lets us know that what we're doing is connecting with people when the crowd cheers like that. It's funny because in Colorado, it used to be like on the East Coast, the crowd would be raucous. And then we come out to Colorado and it was like kind of a little muted. We'd finish our sets and the crowds wouldn't really go crazy or cheer that much. And, uh, as I look back on it, it was probably us, right? It's like it's like you get the cheer when you put the amount of work
Mhm.
into the band that we've been putting into the band over the last couple of years. So there was a period from 2011 until 2019 where it was 8 years that we didn't write any new songs. We weren't really practicing. We were just getting together for three shows at a time just to stay afloat, really. John was
Mhm.
concentrating on Splice, and It's on Me and his other like startup projects, software engineering projects that he was doing. And so our energy was split into different ways. Like I had three kids that I was raising, and I was at home basically concentrating on the kids and coaching baseball and doing all of these other, family man kind of things. And Aaron was having kids at the time. John just had his first kid, and Alan's kid is
Mhm.
younger than me and Aaron's. And so we were just in a different place for those years. But if you're not really putting the time in and you're not putting the energy in, and you show up to the show, there was a lot of brilliant moments in that time, but the consistency wasn't quite what it was. We call it set break now. Set 2011 to 2019 was set break, right? And then 2019 it was set break is over. But we're very careful not to say set break is over because the last time we made a big deal about that, the whole entire world shut down for 2 years,
Yeah.
right? And so we came back though in 2019, like late 2019. We played 8 shows in a row, like two night stands, Syracuse, Richmond,
Mhm.
Burlington, and there was an energy around those shows that it was kind of blowing up. Barber had made this post on social media that he was ready to be back in the band full time. He said it something like "Set break is over, gas tanks refilled." He
Yeah,
had like a
yeah, I
little,
remember.
and that post was probably our most liked post of all time. It had like 6 or 7 thousand likes on the Instagram post, um, and we were ready like to hit the ground running, right? And so March 12th was the first show of that. We had 70 shows booked in 2020, and we were ready to go
Wow.
in the first show of the year. I had surgery on the 15th of January 2020, and so we had to actually, it's funny, we had to cancel our Silver Springs Fillmore shows,
Mhm.
um, and we canceled the little run where it was Raleigh, Charlotte, and two shows in Silver Springs pre-pandemic. This is just for my eye. I was in the hospital, and then we were coming back for the first shows after that, and it was March 12th, and and that was the first day of like the pandemic. March 12th, 2020. On the 11th, the NBA had shut down their league, and then on the 12th, we showed up, and Barbara came in from California, and we sat backstage, the two of us, and kind of just said to each other, "Does this feel good?" And neither of us felt like it felt good to us to go on
Mhm.
stage and to bring 2,000 people into a room when we knew that there was a virus going around that we knew nothing about, but we knew that it was a deadly virus.
Mhm.
And so Magner and Alan came into the room, and Barbara and I were like, we're pulling the plug on this show and on the weekend. And ultimately, we knew that the Capitol Theater shows we had 2 weeks later weren't going to happen either, because the virus was already raging in Westchester, New York. That was kind of the first place that it hit, and there was a community up there that was everybody was getting sick in, and so the whole tour got canceled. 70 shows, the whole year got canceled. 70
Yeah.
shows got canceled, and that kind of took the steam out of the momentum that we had built up over the previous couple months. And it was actually probably the best thing that ever happened to the band, because for the next 18 months, I sat right here in this room teaching. I taught like 800 lessons. And in those 800, but really it was more like 1,200 hours of
Mhm.
teaching, most of it I was playing. And most of what I was playing was rudiments, because I was recording the stuff, playing the rudiments, showing how to do the exercises to the students. And then maybe they would try it right there. But it's like one of those things where you're not going to be able to do this right here, but you need to take this and go practice. So here's how it is, and take it. But what ended up happening was I practiced rudiments for 1,200 hours over that. And that was just in the lessons. And then I took my own lessons with Oteil and practiced another 500 or 600 hours. And so by the end of the pandemic, I had put another almost 2,000 hours of practice in. And John started writing songs. And we had a batch of songs in 2019 that were
Mhm.
good, but they weren't finished. But John started writing songs. We started doing these drive-in concerts. And at one of the drive-in concerts, our friend Joey said, "I have this idea for a rock opera about this group of aliens that comes down, freezes Times Square. You guys are underground in the Nokia or whatever PlayStation,
Whichever
and you're
iteration of it is now.
and you're so deep in the bowels of this theater that you guys are the only people who don't get frozen. You go up, you face the aliens, go onto the alien ship. The alien like leader's son becomes a fan of the band, and through your music you save the world. And this is just an idea." And John was like, "I like this is kind of cool." And so while I was working on Lively, which is what Live Lesson Masters turned into,
Mhm.
Joey and Aaron and John were in the studio working on this 14-song rock opera. And it was the first time in probably 20 years that the writing process was so refined, that and so like focused towards a goal, that we came up with a slew of songs that kind of we can carry a set. We have John said to me at one point, he's like, "You know what we need? We need 10 to 15 new songs that can close a set closers. Like just like a set. If you have a set closer, it's a
Yeah.
great song with a big ending, right? And if a song can close a set, you know that you've got a great song on your hands." And he was like, "We need 15 new set closers." And and these guys just got to work and started pumping out all this material. And then when the pandemic started to wind down and we went back out onto tour, the and we started to develop these songs on stage with our fans, we took a new attitude. And, talk about mental health. It, when you have a big fan base and you're bringing new songs in, it could be difficult because people want to hear the old songs, not the new songs. And you have to just trust yourself and stick with it. And we overplayed the new songs. We played them to the point where people maybe didn't want to hear them as we were playing them. But that's the
Mhm.
only way to make them great. And ultimately, they all became great. Now we're sitting on like 25 to 30 new songs. And, a bass player that like really spent a lot of time learning technique and new techniques and John was taking vocal lessons this whole time that this was happening. He was out in LA taking vocal lessons from a vocal instructor. And so we came out of the pandemic with renewed energy. And you talk about the Renaissance. I don't know that this Renaissance could have happened if the pandemic didn't happen, because it just set us up. Like there was never time for us to do what we did. Not There was time from 2011 to 2018 certainly, but we didn't want to do it then, right? And and
Right.
and once we got back together and we're all on the same page, we had time to do the things that we needed to do, like we were a new band, like it was like 1997 to 1999 all over again. We weren't touring heavily. We were just writing and writing a rock opera and having a goal, focused goal. And so the Boulder being our last two shows that we've played now, the shows that you were at,
Mhm.
um, it was like, for me, it was the culmination of everything that's been happening over the last 4 years. From the moment that John said set break is over, and it wasn't quite over. There was a whole other set break, right? But but the other thing is that we had to like deal with the hardships of going through a pandemic. I mean, it wasn't easy,
Of
right?
course.
And I think halfway through the pandemic, and this is kind of one thing that I think we should touch on, is halfway through the pandemic, everybody thanks. I want to shout out Backline, which is an organization that helps musicians and people in the music industry find help when they're having mental health issues. And I couldn't find a therapist. I could not find a therapist for the life of me. I went down the list of therapists that were on my insurance, and every single one was filled. And which makes sense because the whole world was shut down. The whole world
Right.
had anxiety and depression all at the same time. And so I called Backline up and they hooked me up with this therapist. And um, and I know that the other guys in the band did the same thing at the same time, right? And so while this was all going on, we were we were checking in on our mental health in a way maybe that we hadn't done in previous iterations of the band, right? And we're a little older, we're a little more mature, and we're a little bit more tuned in with what anxiety is, what depression is, like how they affect your life, how they affect your productivity, how they affect your creativity, and um, and that process of all these things happening at the same time, and the band kind of working on ourselves mentally. um, it all it all came together with these last couple of tours, in a way that creatively, and the band is locked together in a way that we haven't been probably since 2009, 2007 to 2009. And we have like 3 year chunks where things just go amazing for us, right?
Mhm.
2000, 1999 to 2002, 2007 to 2009, now 2022 to 2024. But my feeling is we're not going to fall apart this time. Like we've always would get to a certain point and then the whole thing would crumble, for one way or another. And it was always mental, right? Like that's what would happen was we would get to a certain point, something would happen, and one of the three of us would lose it,
Right.
mentally. And then that would just, we would self destruct. Right. And right now we're in a place where things are going really well. The band is growing really fast. Shows are starting to sell out 6 months in advance. And I don't feel like we're doing anything that's gonna make it crumble, be it, substance abuse um, or whatever it is that leads to that kind of a thing happening to us. Right. So, yeah, I mean, you got to see the band in a great place. And you said
Mhm.
it was cool to see the band so happy and so excited on
I
stage.
haven't seen you jump around like I couldn't take my eyes off of you guys. I was like, don't get me wrong, the new LD and everything is the stage itself is a new spectacle and it's fresh and it's incredible to witness, but I was like, look at these guys. Like I just kept kind of looking around like is anybody else like and maybe it's recency bias or lack of recency bias that I haven't seen it in a while, but man, I was like there this is it's so funny that you say 11 to 19 was set break because that was my prime tour. 11
Right.
was my first camp.
Right.
Um
A lot of
and
people said to us, wait, so you mean the whole time I've been seeing the band was you guys fucking off? And it's
yeah.
like, yeah. So, like, right now is probably, those Boulder shows is probably the first time you've ever seen the band in our prime, right? Because
Yeah.
we were in our prime. There was moments, again, like 17 had some good moments, like,
I saw great
14.
moments for
Yeah,
sure.
14 had some good moments, right? There were some great shows where we got it for the whole entire show. It just clicked. But there wasn't ever a run of shows where it was like 12 great shows in a row or like
Mhm.
12 of the best shows we've ever played back to back, which is now we go on a tour, like starting basically in Iceland. The cap shows were great at the beginning of 23. The very beginning of 23 was like a little shaky. We were getting our foot going back out on tour, but the cap shows, it started to click for us. And then, the cavern shows where we did this Fifth Element. We jammed along with the Fifth Element inside the caverns. We put the movie up and did like a 2 hour jam, which was phenomenal. And then Iceland hit a level that we just haven't been at in years. I got
Mhm.
to say, probably about 14 years, where Iceland, I felt it. I was like, okay, this is now like 1999. This is as good as we've ever been, except
Wow.
for we're better singers than we were then. We're better musicians than we were then. We're more mature. And so it had the energy, but it was more polished. So to me, it's
Mhm.
the best the band has ever sounded. I can listen to our band now in a way that I can't listen to any of the other eras because there's always something that I hear where I'm like, I don't love the vocals here. I don't love how I'm playing. It was a lot of it is just like I was learning how to play bass on stage. I started
Yeah.
late. I started and I hear myself making so many like not mistakes, but just doing things that I don't love and or playing too many notes or like, playing, hitting like chord changes in the wrong spot. And there's all of that shit back in the day. And right
Sure.
now, I don't hear any of that. Like right now, I listen to a whole show and it's just like, it just sounds like, wow, this band's locked in. So yeah, it's really exciting right now. We're about to, and full circle tomorrow. Obviously by the time this comes out, this will have now passed, but you know, tomorrow in our timeline
Mhm.
is the Fillmore Silver Spring shows. We have two shows at the Fillmore. They're not technically makeup shows because we canceled those shows so far back, but
Right.
you know, these are the last shows from all of the shows that got canceled in the pandemic and all of the shows that got canceled before that. And yes, I would be remiss to mention that people who live in Charlotte are going to be like, what about Charlotte? But these are the last shows that that we needed to come back and do to sort of close the loop
Right.
on everything that happened. And when we get through these shows, it will be, it will truly be like, off to the races, off to the future for us.
Yeah, you're in a new era, and it's so funny you mentioned, moments when I think about those years. I mean, for me personally, those were so many transformative years of my life. I mean, I was 17, and I'll never forget Halloween in Syracuse at the F Shed in 2015, and the New Year's the video game theme show. I think it was New Year's 17 with the Ducktales. Like so many. I mean, the spin the wheel set at camp on a Sunday that had perfume and like there were just so many important moments musically that were a way for me to kind of track personal development. I mean, I I met I fell in love with girls at your guys' shows. I found partying at your guys' shows. I found friends that I still are family to me. And when we bring this all back to a circle of mental health, I think about the place that I was then and versus the place that I am now, the same way that the band was. The person that I was at that time versus the person that I am now, I'm the best I've ever been. And
Right.
I really can feel, I mean, when I walked into Boulder Theater, there was not just like a buzz from the music, not just people excited. I personally, I looked at the stage and I was just like, this is different. Like I can feel in both in terms of reciprocation, I feel different looking at the stage. The stage feels different to me, and the energy in the room was unlike anything I've seen in a long time. I mean, you talk about the new music. I'm extremely fresh to all of it. Freeze and excuse me if I mistake the name, but like the doorbell rings twice or the doorbell rang
Ring the
twice. Ring the
ring the
doorbell.
doorbell twice.
I was like, this is so different. I mean, Barber's tone is different. The sounds, it's different. But then again, opening of set two, the first night, I think it was, I mean, dribble helicopter cyclone. And I'm just like, okay, like it's still the biscuits, but
It's the biscuit. And the
it's,
new songs are, there was times where we would write new songs that didn't fit with the flow of the band.
mm-hmm,
But over the last 3 years, partially because we have Joey. So Joey Friedman is one of our close friends over the years, and he's probably the biggest Disco Biscuits fan that's out there. I mean, he's coming up on his 400th show right now, and he has been writing with us. He sits in the room while we're writing music and starts conceptually putting lyrics out there, and then brings them to us, and then we all work on the lyrics together. And then Barbara's got to sing the stuff, so he'll sing through it and change a couple of words and change a couple lines to get it to where it's singable
mm-hmm.
and poetic. And but one thing about Joey is he'll come backstage and be like, "Hey, dribble, you guys don't play the intro anymore. You just play the intro for like 30 seconds and then you start the song and it's over. But like, what happened to like a good old fashioned 10-minute dribble intro?" Then he'll play us one. He'll be like, "Here's a dribble intro. Let's listen to it." And we'll sit backstage and listen to it. And then, all four of us will be like, "Okay, all right, let's do this." And then, we'll go out for the next dribble and we'll know, don't pull the trigger too quickly. Like let it go. Be patient. The biscuits are best when we're patient. Sometimes too patient. Sometimes like we'll just loop for too long and it's like, are we ever going to change? But like
Mm-hmm.
that's when we're best. Where the energy builds the best. The themes develop best when we just kind of sit back and listen and wait, because eventually somebody's going to come in and do something brilliant, and something's going to happen. Changes are going to come in. Harmonies are going to develop. A melody's going to come in, but you have to give it time for that stuff to happen. You can't
Mm-hmm.
force it. It doesn't. You can't just go, okay, here's the melody, and now what are we all doing? It's like you have to take time to listen to interact and let the music happen. And so Joey has been a game changer for the band, because every song that has come back this year, last year we brought back Reactor. When I say brought back, we've been playing Reactor, but they just weren't explosive the way they had been back in the day.
Hmm.
And he played us a couple Reactors and was like, listen to what the peak of Reactor used to be like, and like listen to how you used to get there. And and now we know, like, be patient in Reactor, take it to the top. Like, we call it laps. Like, when you get there and you're at the very top and the energy is as high as it can go, take it for another lap, because the energy will go higher, even though you don't
Hmm.
think it can. It will. Something will happen. Alan will start, banging on the toms or doing like a double kick drum, or something is going to happen with the band that's going to take you up to the next level if you just let it get there. And like so much of like the early days, like, the brilliance of the band in 2001 and 2002 was, you think you couldn't go any further, and then we would take it up another notch. And people just lose it when that happens, because it's like they think it can't go any bigger, and then it gets bigger, right? And that, like, before that saber dance, that cheer that we got, like, it was like minutes of cheer. It felt almost self-indulgent that we were just standing there taking it in. But what are you supposed to do? The
Yeah.
crowd's getting louder and louder and louder. I just stand and let them go as long as they want to go. And then when you hear it tail off, we'll be back in a couple of minutes and get out of
Yep.
there, right? But
Yeah.
but that whole thing happened because backstage before the show, Coach Joey said to us, "Hey, when you're jamming into saber dance, be patient. Take some extra time to let it build up. Don't just play the melody, John. Tease the melody. And then go back into the jam." John did that 3 or 4 times. And before he even did that, he was going back and forth from Waves and this other song from the Very Moon musical. All of those things happened because we had somebody backstage with us to say, don't forget. Like, and basically I say to Joey, why don't you just at the beginning of before every set, just say, hey, be patient in every song. You don't have to go through it. Say, be patient in Run Like Hell, be patient in Basis, be patient in Dribble. But he does go through every individual song and tells us not to be patient, but where to be patient. Like, hey, be
Right.
patient in the intro here, be patient in the jam here. Like, let this one really go out. Hey, there's this Run Like Hell from 2009 I want you guys to listen to that has these changes that you don't play in Run Like Hell, but they're really, really big. And he played it for us. And I was like, okay, I got that. It's almost like Champions. Let's do it. And we went out and played Run Like Hell. And I brought these changes in at the top of Run Like Hell. And it was like, right, this is fucking huge. Like, this
Yeah.
is the thing. So you need, it's like a football team wouldn't go out on the field without their coach reminding them of all of the little things, right? These are professional people who are getting paid millions of dollars a year to do their job, but they still need a slew of coaches on the sideline
Yeah.
to tell them, hey, don't forget this. Don't, oh, you're leaning back too far on your back foot. You weren't paying attention here. Like, you know, pros who get paid all the money in the world still need these reminders constantly. And also, like, no sports team in the world is going to play a game and then not go sit in the film room and watch everything that they did. And that's another thing that we're doing now. It's like we play the show, then we go back and listen. And every time I listen, I hear something that I either love or that I don't love. And I make a note to myself, right, don't do that or do that.
Hmm.
And so we're almost treating it like we're a sports team at this point, right? So we have people around us who are helping us with every aspect. And you know what? If we weren't investing into this so heavily right now, we wouldn't have people around us investing so heavily into it, right? But
Yeah.
now that
That's the
we're
key.
now that we're committed and healthy, mentally especially healthy, we have the people that are close to us rallying around the band, from like Steve Bartosi, who's the CEO of Splice, or was the CEO of Splice, which is a music software that producers use to get samples.
Mhm.
Hugely successful company that actually John was, he came up with the whole idea of it. So he's like, one of the original owners of this company.
Mhm.
Huge company, valued in the hundreds of millions of dollars. And this guy he's had three startups: GroupMe, Splice, Blade, which Blade is like Uber for helicopters.
Yeah, that's three. It's
And
three notable. Yeah.
three huge companies. And this dude is spending a ton of time backstage with us working on our vocals, right? And Joey's working on the set lists and the songs. And Max Dawson, who was our original, way back in the day, our original archivist, he then kind of moved on. He was on Survivor. He was a professor of a professor who was teaching about reality television. He was the Survivor podcast host. And a couple of years ago, he kind of inched back into our scene. And now he's doing the Touchdowns All Day podcast. And he's showing up at the shows and catching content from the fans, content backstage from the band. And it's just this group of people that's surrounding us, that's helping prop up the whole entire thing right now, and helping push us forward and keeping us on track. Like, for instance, Joey and Monster, they Monster, Steve Martosi, they
Mhm.
are very concerned about me keeping my voice in shape, right? So about 2 weeks ago, I got a phone call and was like, "Hey, it's 2 weeks till tour. Maybe lay off the weed for the next 2 weeks." And so I was like, right. And so, 2 Mondays ago, I just put the weed down and was like, I'm going to take these 2 weeks off. My voice has been a little bit gravelly. In the fall, I took 10 weeks off, and it was the best that my voice has ever sounded. And it's like, I might not have in the past prioritized sounding great over smoking weed, right? Because I'm a
Mhm.
pothead, right? And
Sure.
I never even like I'd be like, "Are you kidding me? I'm a pothead. This is how my voice sounds. This is what I do." But now it's too important. Like, the band is too important to me right now. The success of the band hinges on us all taking this seriously, and that means, if that means not smoking weed, then that means not smoking weed, and I have to prioritize my voice over my being high, which honestly, then of course
You get
you're
a different
sober.
high, but you get
It's
a
and it's
different high
better.
off
Like,
of it. Yeah.
it's
And
better when you're sober, right?
for sure. I
It's
mean,
it's
I think so personally. But yeah, it's what it really sounds like to me is it's collective effort for calculated freedom. You
Oh, I like
guys
that.
you guys are cohesively working together and each being a different part to create a formula where there's such a baseline of intention that in those moments where you guys can be free and you can pick up and trust each other is
Yeah,
just it's
trust is
where
a
those
huge
yeah it's
trust
where
is such a
those
huge part of it. It's
oh I'm
like
sure
being able to trust your partners. um, there was a lot of years of mistrust.
hmm
And in those years, we weren't really friends. We weren't like really close. There was just like mistrust on stage. There was mistrust off of stage. And that's such a great point, because right now there's a level of trust in each other. I trust that my band's going to show up. I
hmm
trust that my band is committed for the long term, which I didn't know for many years. If the band was just going to end the next week, I just didn't know. I never knew
hmm
if the other guys in the band were this committed. Now I do know for sure. This is what we're doing, and nobody's going anywhere. Of course, we've got now the best management in the whole entire game with 1111.
they're the
And
best
it's just such a big part of it is, Ben Baruch being our manager, uh, and, having somebody who's just gets what it takes to create hype, gets what it takes to be good, like puts us in situations where we're going to be able to perform our best, and makes us avoid situations where we're not going to be able to perform well.
Mhm.
And just across the board right now, the whole entire organization is humming, and we've made a lot of changes within the organization. Obviously,
Sure.
Herm being our LD, he's on a level right now. Johnny, one of my best friends for 20 years, and we hit a moment where we had to make a change, and it was kind of a creative thing. We were looking for something different to happen creatively, and we knew in order to get there that we were going to have to make a change. And when we knew Twiddle was taking a hiatus at the end of the year, and that some of their crew members were going to become available, and we've hired two of their crew members, Herm being one of them, and the lights really look spectacular. It's some of the best looks I've ever seen with us. The pictures look unbelievable, and the combination of Herm and Tara, our photographer, it's a 1-2 punch that has us looking great every night.
Mhm.
It's sounding great is another thing. Rich, our front of house engineer, is a longtime fan. He's been with us for maybe a year and a half or 2 years, and he's getting the soundboards out before anybody goes to bed at night. The soundboards are up on Nugs, right? And it's just the
Yeah.
music being that available that quickly at the quality that it's at. It's great, and then
It's tangible.
it's
It's
like,
real. You can
but there's something
recognize.
else. There's something else going on that we should talk about, since you're a mental health podcast,
Sure.
right? And you know, I hit a point in my therapy where I couldn't go any further. It wasn't changing anything to go to therapy every single week. And I asked my therapist what he thought about me going to see a psychiatrist, and he said, he didn't necessarily feel like that was the move for me. And so I left my therapist, and like a year went by, and I was struggling, like mentally, really struggling mentally. And my previous manager, he was just he's the sweetest guy in the world, but we weren't seeing eye to eye on things, and it was frustrating me, and I was kind of teeing off on him in a way that I don't feel great about teeing off on anybody. But
Mhm.
I was getting angry, and the anger was coming out in text messages and phone calls that I'm not necessarily proud of how I was acting. And he said to me, "Hey man, I'm saying this out of love as a friend. I think you need to consider medication." And, nobody wants to hear somebody else be like, you need medication. Something's wrong with your brain, or you're chemically imbalanced, right? Nobody wants to hear that. But he said it enough times that eventually um, I started thinking maybe this is something I need to do. Well, our monitor engineer, Brian Waldor, one of the most miserable people I've ever met in my entire life. Always upset, always pissed, always yelling at you. Like it was just horrible. But he's a great monitor engineer, and
Mhm.
he's a friend of ours. And so you could yell at me as much as you want, and I'm going to yell at you back. But, but you're not going anywhere. Like his joke is, I'm going to die on stage with you guys. That's my plan, is to be with you forever. Right. And so that kind of loyalty is something that you can't really find. But in the middle of the pandemic, he went to a psychiatrist, and he started taking, I don't know, Prozac or Zoloft. And within weeks, he was smiling. His entire demeanor changed. He went from a
Wow.
miserable fuck to the sweetest, kindest, happiest guy on stage. And I told him this recently, and he said it was really meaningful to him. I was like, dude, you have influenced my life in such a profound, deep way that I just need to point it out. Like, your decision to go to the doctor and get medicated, and my sort of front row seat to your mental health changing, has changed the way that I perceive medication. I saw it It's like, here's the person who was just making everybody pissed all the time. And now he's a completely different person, completely different person. Now, I sort of knew this about myself because, like, the way that we would party was we were going after serotonin,
Sure.
dopamine, right? Like those were the things that we were using were serotonin enhancing.
Hmm.
And I knew that so many of the great shows that we played over the years were serotonin enhanced shows. And
That's on
um,
both sides of the guardrail for sure.
right. And
Yeah.
so for me, I knew that if I was serotonin enhanced, I didn't have any issues on stage. I didn't have anxiety. I didn't have, like panic. I just like, I didn't, I wasn't all over the place musically. I was calm and patient. And I was backstage one time at the Sherman Theater in
Stroudsburg.
Stroudsburg.
Hmm.
And these two hippies strolled backstage. And I had been early in the afternoon kind of dabbling with some serotonin enhancing substances. And they strolled in and they were like, "Hey, Brownie." And I was like, "Hey, what's your name?" Now, if I was sober, there's no question that two hippies walk in and I'm like, "Hey, can we get these fucking hippies out of here?" Like, like, what are you guys doing in here? Or where's security? Like, how did these people get in here? Like, we protect our private space in a way where we're like, like there's a lot of people that could just stroll in, right? It's like, but it, it wasn't my reaction. My reaction was, "What's your name? Sit down." There was like a red velvet cake there. Let's eat some cake together. 30 minutes went by. And I said to myself right then and there, I was like, whoa, I'm different like this than I am sober. And this is probably like 8 years ago at this point. And,
Hmm.
and, and that was a moment of kind of clarity for me where it took me a long time to get there, but it was a moment of clarity that there was a chemical imbalance and I was self-medicating for it. And, um, and, ultimately the combination of me thinking about that one experience, me seeing Brian and the profound changes that he went through, and other members of my band having then followed suit and going and getting medicated and seeing the profound changes in their personalities, and then my last manager being like, "Hey man, you really should do this." It all added up to a visit to a psychiatrist, and I sat with the psychiatrist for like, what was it, like after like 15 minutes, and you can see we've been going for almost an hour now, and I could talk for 5 hours if you wanted, like
I'm
I
the
could,
same way.
I don't have any problem just getting going and talking. And and about 15 minutes into me going on one of these similar rants, he said, "Stop." And I was like, "Okay." And he's like, "Before we go on anymore, I just want to address something. You have horrible ADD." Like, it's just like, it's the most clear thing of all time. It's like, you've got ADHD and it's bad, like
Hmm.
crippling. Like, how do you get anything done? I was like, I don't. I mean, I have a really, really hard time staying on task. I really have a hard time with this. And he's like, "All right." We got through the whole entire session and we did another session. And then I took a blood test that was going to kind of test what medications, how every medication metabolizes within my body. And a couple of weeks went by and the blood test came back and I went back to the psychiatrist and he said, "I'm going to give you Wellbutrin and I'm going to give you Adderall." And yes, I said to him, "It's funny. I kind of feel like if I had had Adderall in college, I would have graduated college." And he's like,
Hmm.
"I'm sure of it. Like, of course you would have." Like, I got so close. I was like 3 weeks away from the end of college, and my
Hmm.
father passed away, and then I never went back. And And I've tried a couple of times, but it's just like I have a hard time sticking with it. I
Sure.
have right here, I have a 19-page paper sitting right next to my desk right here that's been sitting there for 5 years waiting to go with pen to get one of my grades turned from an incomplete into a grade from like 25, almost 30 years now. Right.
Wow.
Um, so he medicated me, and it's changed my life. I don't know how else to say it. Like, it changed my life. I'm not as aggressive. I'm not as anxious. I don't have stage fright or panic. I don't have, there's no, there's no need for substances, chemicals. Like, I don't have that need when I go to the show
Hmm.
now. Before the show, it's not like, oh, who's got something to get me where I need to be in order to be able to do this. I'm where I need to be baseline. They balanced the chemicals in my brain. They added dopamine in, they added serotonin in, and now I can just go up and perform sober.
Hmm.
And and then it's like I don't have the crash the next day. We don't have the fights afterwards because everybody doesn't have any serotonin or dopamine. Like, it doesn't fall apart. The
Right.
whole thing is not falling apart because we're all have gotten to a place through what, for some of us, it's meditation. For
Hmm.
Alan, it's like, exercise and veganism, right? For me, it's Wellbutrin. And we all have gotten ourselves into a place where we're stable. And when you have four stable members of the band, you get incredible performances, just one after the other. And
For sure.
I like, it's all the things, the practice, the songwriting, but like, all of that is for the naught, because we did that in 99 to 98 to 99, and I still got fired from the band in January 3rd of 2000, after our best run ever, coming out of this incredible tour in 1999 and playing these 6 shows at TLA, 12:30, 12:31, doing the Akira set, playing 4 sets on that New Year's show. And then I was fired 2 days later because it didn't matter. The practice, the songs, the incredible performances, all didn't matter if on Tuesday and Wednesday you fell apart mentally, and then, like,
Hmm.
couldn't interact with people, and it was just fight after fight, and, resistance, and, like, everything that could go wrong would go wrong. And
Wow.
that happened so many different times in our career. It happened in 2000, and then, of course, Sammy left the band because of the same problems kept happening over and over again. And then 2010, when uh, when John punched the wall and broke his hand, and, like, it was just like, and then, it's just like over and over again we keep getting into self-destructive situations, right?
Hmm.
And it's like, um I shudder to think of what it would have been like if somebody had said to us in 1997, "Hey, before you start this band, you guys should all, go to a psychiatrist and figure out what chemicals you're going to need to do this without partying, because the partying will destroy your band. There's no band that isn't destroyed by substance abuse. It's
For
like,
sure.
if there is substance
Anybody.
abuse, it destroys it, and it's like, it
Yeah.
happened to the biggest bands in the world. It happened to the Grateful Dead. It happened to Fish. Like, they broke up. Why?
Yeah.
Substance abuse. Straight up substance abuse. Trey went to fucking jail. It's like,
Yeah.
there's there's like, he spent a year in drug court, and it's like, so nobody is impervious to the pitfalls of substance abuse when you start, abusing substances. And for the bands right now, we have found a way to be great without that. and then we go home and everybody's happy. There's no
Hmm.
like the other problem was my home life would fall apart because I'd be
Yeah,
on tour partying and then the crash happened at home, and it's like my marriage, my kids. I was ruining people's times just over and over and over again, just ruining my family's like peace and ruining my band's peace. And so I just like wouldn't, I feel like it has to be said that such a big part of what's happening for the band right now is, and I can't speak for Aaron, I can't speak for John, I can't speak for Alan, I can only speak for myself, but a big part of what's happening is, and I think I was probably the biggest problem in the band. Like, I was the one that was abusing the most, and I was the one that was angry the most, and like, fighting the most. And everybody had their moments,
of
but
course.
but it was me overwhelmingly. And so just getting a doctor and having the doctor diagnose you and having the diagnosis have, a medication that can balance it out. I don't think that any of this could be happening right now had I not done that. It's not just me, so many other things, but like I could destroy this all. Like
Hmm.
all this momentum that we have, had I not had the presence of mind to go and see a doctor first, I would be destroying this right now. I would be destroying the momentum of the band if I was unmedicated, and not under the care of a psychiatrist.
And I think that I mean, that in and of itself, so much of what you're talking about is growth and recognition. And I think that, similarly in my own experience, I'm coming up soon on 2 years of sobriety, which has been a beautifully fruitful endeavor. But it's really just been the presence of mind and myself to recognize what I was doing to myself and how that was affecting other people, and how I wasn't giving myself the chance to do what was right for me. And in the scheme of mental health and what it sounds, I mean, I've known you for 13 years.
Yeah,
This is the clearest, most positive, and just self-aware that I've ever heard from you. And it's so nice to see that, and to see it on stage, but to see it in conversation. And I love that so much of what you really see in this progression and this era of the biscuits is all been rooted on you guys collectively working on mental health.
that's right.
And I guess what I'd love to just ask is, so in a roundabout way, what exactly does mental health mean to you personally? If you take out the success of the band, if you take out all of the external, just Mark, what does mental health mean to you?
Well, you know, it was it took me a really long time to learn what anxiety was. And what I discovered was that I I spent my childhood in a state of um constant anxiety. I would get to like Sunday night and I hadn't done any of my work for school, and like the anxiety would roll over me and the feeling of anxiety would overtake my body, right? Anxiety isn't a mental thing, it's a physical thing.
Hmm.
Like anxiety has physical manifestations, right?
It's
It's like
crippling.
your heart races, your body shakes, right? If you have a panic attack, if you ever had a panic attack and hyperventilated,
Hmm.
your body buzzes. It's like a buzzing inside of your skin. So the combination of like the mind and the body connection, it is a it's kind of like there's an awareness to understand that what was happening to me physically during that time period was being caused by my mental health. It was manifesting in a way that I felt, in my heart and in my lungs and in my breath. But I didn't know what it was, right? Like now you're talking about 1988 or something, right? And nobody really talked about anxiety back then. Nobody really
Hmm.
talked about depression, and the other thing was I as a adult, I had one or two traumatic events happen as an adult, and the post traumatic stress that came out of those events, um, it was stark. It was obvious. I was like, whoa, this is post traumatic stress. And I was able to tie that feeling of PTSD back to how I felt as a child. And I realized that, my parents got separated when I was 3, and it was like right as I was snapping into consciousness, there was just brutal, horrific, barbaric fights in my house between my mom and my dad. Just violence, like physical violence, mental abuse, going both ways between my mom and my dad. Neither one of them was not guilty of this.
Sure.
And this is the first thing that I remember happening. Like my first memories are of my parents just going at it, and me being like, what the hell is happening down there right now? Like, what, me standing at the top of the stairs watching my parents like have just like tussle physically, and screaming at each other, right? Then my dad moved out, and and 3 years later my older brother passed away in a fire that happened in Vermont. He went on a ski vacation with his friends from high school, one of his friends and their parents, and there was a fire in the motel, and my brother passed away, and that was, hard to talk about for me. Devastating experience. Like, it was just the worst thing that's ever happened to me by
Hmm.
so much. And I've had some pretty bad things happen to me over the years, but that one just it was just the most horrible thing of all time. It's my best friend in the world, and like the person that I loved more than anybody. And it's like, I don't think everybody felt that way. Like, people tend to be like, in death, like you put people on a pedestal, but this actually was like the best person in my family by so far. He was the sweetest, most loving. He would bring gifts home every single day for every member of the family. He would bring something home every day from school, go to the store and buy stuff for every one of us. For me, it was always Hershey bars. I loved Hershey chocolate, and every day he would bring me a Hershey bar every single day. And when he passed away, like my life changed in such a drastic way. And what I discovered as an adult was from the years from the ages of 6 to 14, I lived in a constant state of PTSD and anxiety on top of that. But until I discovered weed, which is funny because now we know that weed they prescribe cannabis to soldiers who have
Hmm.
PTSD, and they say it's the only thing that works for them is cannabis. That they'll go and they'll get all these different medications, and it will numb them and put them into a state of like catatonic state. Then they'll get off of that, move to weed, and their lives will start to flourish. So that happened to me when I hit 14 and I found weed. My life started to flourish again. And through high school, I was better because I had a medication, right? But again, I was self medicating.
Right.
I found the thing that I needed to self medicate for that. The same way that in the band, I found the thing that I needed to get my serotonin even, right? So I always was finding the right things like that would chemically fix the things, but not none of them were necessary. Besides, the weed was fine and it's benign and it definitely helped with the PTSD,
Sure.
but the harder drugs really bad for you and make
Hmm.
make things ultimately worse. But so for me to answer your question, right, mental health for me is is for me, it's a chemical balance, right? For me, it's about making sure um, that I'm in chemical balance, right? Because no matter
Hmm.
how much exercise, no matter how much meditation I did, no matter how well I ate, no matter how many hours I slept, and like if you have anxiety, we tell this to our kids all the time, if you sleep 8 hours a night, if you exercise and you meditate, 90% of the time, it's going to improve your anxiety. It may not completely, eliminate it,
Resolve
but
it.
it's
Yeah.
going to improve it, right? And but no matter how much I did those things, I never quite got there, right? And so, my, you know, um, to me, mental health is a, like a consistent intendedness with whatever situation
Consistent
you're put.
intention. I
Yeah, it's
like
just
that.
it's like it's a consistency I have a song called Miracles. I don't know if you know Miracles, but
Hmm.
um I have a
I haven't
line
been that out of the loop.
intention. One of the lines is intention never means a thing unless until you act, right? And it's like
Hmm.
you can intend on things, but unless you're doing something to make it that way, it's never gonna get there. I can intend to be as good of a bass player as Victor Wooten, or as technical of a bass player. And good is subjective, but technical of a bass player as Victor Wooten. But it's never going to happen unless I sit down and spend 5 to 6 hours a day working on double thumb technique, right? And
Hmm.
which I never do, because like ultimately I don't really care if I use a double thumb, because it doesn't fit in our music. It's not going to make the Disco Biscuits better for me to be able to play 64th notes with my thumb back and forth. It's just gonna make the Disco Biscuits sloppier, or like
Hmm.
more. It's just not what's gonna make our band better. I do practice double thumb technique, from time to
Sure.
time, but not enough to get to the level that Victor Wooten is at. And I don't even really intend to ever get there, but it's just like it's an example of like you have to know what it is that you want out of your life, and then you need to like do the things that are going to get you there. And if you don't do them, then you're not gonna get there. And when it comes to mental health, it's like all of the different things, and then for me, plus a chemical that's going to help the balance. But ultimately where that puts me is just like in a state of acceptance of the world. Like, I wake up and I'm just sort of accept that this is the world, this is where we're at. And uh, I'm not freaking out about anything. I'm not worried. Things go wrong every day. Every day there's problems.
Hmm.
Every day there's something that happens where in the past I would lose my cool. But what I've learned is losing your cool doesn't help the situation, right? It's like, let's not worry about blame, and let's worry about a solution, right? And what's the solution to fix the situation we're in? Don't worry about how we got here. It's all about how we're going to get out of here,
Hmm.
right? And it's one thing to know that, but it's another thing to be able to live it and
For sure.
embrace it, and everybody's got to find their own path to that, right? Because everybody's brain is different, right? Some people can just meditate and exercise, and it puts them in a place where they need to be, or be sober, right?
Hmm.
And other people need a little bit of help to get there, whether it's therapy or medication, or whatever it is that gets you there. But yeah, I mean, that's what mental health means to me. It means stability. It means consistency and stability. You know.
So I think a beautiful relation that I can make that I kind of just witnessed happen was when we were talking about the band. I think what I said was collective intention for calculated freedom.
Yeah.
And what you just explained to me about what mental health means to you is virtually the same thing because you're having the consistent intention for calculated balance and calculated
Yeah,
stability. So
that's right.
it really seems like you've learned
I get chills
through,
from that just now.
yeah, it really looks like you've, I mean, and I can sympathize with so much of it. I mean, I struggle a lot. I'm terrible at sitting still. I'm terrible at just being in something because what I've had to practice is facing things and facing myself. And I've made so many of these changes in my life, whether it was getting my weight under control or finding sobriety and all these things, but I've consistently recognized that, okay, I need to go climb. I want to go hike. I want to go run. I want to go lift weights. I want to go do, like, it's always, in a way, it's me. It has been me finding tools, but it's also been me to an extent running away from just being able to sit within it and let it marinate. And sometimes the only way out is through. And I can really, I mean, we've got a lot of shared experience. I mean, I've lost friends. I lost my dad when I was 17, and that was majorly impactful right before, literally months before I saw my first Biscuits concert, right before I graduated high school. And that was 12 years ago now, almost 13. And I can think back and I can realize the impact that that had on me in both good and bad ways. I can look on the friends that I unfortunately do not have here anymore, and they weren't able to get through it and get to the other side. And
Yeah,
it's interesting when you really look at life through that kind of a scope and you say, but I am here and I did make it, and I'm finding that baseline and I'm finding stability and I'm growing and I'm getting better, because none of us are fucking perfect. We're all, I mean, we're at one point or another, we're all a fucking mess.
that's 100% true.
And it's about learning to pick up the pieces, but it's also about finding a reason why you want to pick them up. And for you, in turn, I mean, musically, of course it's a reason, and music is something to fall back to, and it's cathartic, but it also gives you a place to put yourself into, and it serves you while you serve it. Playing music with the Disco Biscuits or Electron or Conspirator or DJing, all of these things that you do are a way for you to serve people and a way for people to internalize a piece of you. And that feeds back into who you are, and it's helped you cultivate that stability and create that peace within yourself. And you look at it now, I mean, how fucking badass is it that you're playing shows at Nectar's with your son on the kit?
It's the best. I
I
actually just confirmed three more shows with him. We have another family band run coming up in the end of June that I'm really excited about. You know, hopefully by the time this airs, those will be when are you when is this going to air? Do you know?
It'll probably be within the next 2 weeks or so.
Right. So yeah, you know, in the end of June, probably shows aren't even announced yet, but we're going to do a little bit of run from Philly, Jersey, and Connecticut, so we could hit kind of
Oh,
uh,
that's great.
our area and Aggie's area, and we want to hit the beach right before July 4th. It's the week before July 4th, and so we're going to hit the beach out in Asbury, and you know, it's incredible playing with the kid. He's so, you know, I've been there watching him grow for 6 years, and it from a beginner into professional, and you know, getting on stage with him is it's wild, man. It's sharing those that moment with him and the crowd and the energy. It was really really special, and get you know, it's we've been working towards that for a really long time.
Yeah, and if you think about it too, you said you've been watching him for 6 years. You've been watching him for longer than that. You've watched
That's right.
this person develop into who he is. And using your experience to help guide him and show him what those pitfalls can be. And having somebody like you, I'm sure, is incredibly influential and beneficial for him. I mean, it's funny too. We're talking about I had a conversation with Jake earlier today for an episode, and we had a lovely conversation. And I something that I said to him was that I've found such solace in my own journey by watching people that I know are good do things that I know they're capable of. And I've watched you play music for 13 years, almost half my life. And you've always been very kind to me through the years. We've always had we've always seen each other and talked to each other. And I mean, I've spent birthdays with the Biscuits. I spent birthdays with Electron, one of which was at the Ardmore. And I remember I came back from getting a drink from the bar and everybody's freaking out like, where have you been? Where have you been? And it's because you were wishing some girl a happy birthday. And I had 10 of my friends are pointing at me and pointing at me. And you're like, who else's birthday is it? And I walk back up and I put my hand up and you're like, Mike, it's your birthday? And I was like, yeah. And you were like, when? I was like, right fucking now. And it was such a funny thing. And one thing that I'll never forget, and this is a personal thing and something I've always really wanted to thank you for deeper than I did at the time, is after I had my back injury in 2018, the New Year's run that you guys did at the Fillmore when you did the hot air balloon show.
Yep.
I remember I sent you a message that was just me saying, hey man, like, I'm so stoked for you guys. I'm wishing you the best. Cause I was at that point, I was in a deep depression. I was physically ill, mentally in a horrible place. It was the first of two rock bottoms in my life.
Right.
And I sent you that message just out of good faith and just to wish you well. And I was sort of getting back on my feet and I was like physically doing okay. And I remember you were like, dude, if you can make it to the show, like, don't worry about anything else. Just text our manager and like, we'll get you on the list. And it was a hot New Year's Eve in Philly Biscuits show. And you were like, dude, I just want you to be there. If you can be there, I got it. Don't worry about it. And that was the first concert that I had seen in 6 months. It was the first time that I like really left the house that I could go and make it through that. And it was appropriate. I mean, it was the anniversary of the hot air balloon and I got to see this creation come to life on stage, and Tommy Hamilton handed me a piece of cake in the crowd. And
That's so great.
yeah, it was a beautiful thing. And I've always appreciated, you've always been the most accessible guy to get to within the Biscuits community. And it's because
Hopefully
you
within the hopefully within the whole jam community. That's my goal. I don't want to just
truth.
be the most accessible in the disco Biscuits. I want
Yeah.
anybody to be able to reach out, and I'm there for them. You know what I
I,
mean? And
and
there's times
yeah.
where I'm like, ooh, maybe I should back up and not be so
Mhm.
accessible. But the reality is it's like it creates connections
Yeah.
to be able to and it creates goodwill to be able to help people out. And we're not just musicians, we're mentors, and we're big brothers, and now we're old enough that people call us dad. It's like we're we're in a unique position to be able to help people when they're having struggles. And we do, like, all the time. Like, I have a very close friend of mine from the disco biscuit scene right now who's in a halfway house. And he said to me yesterday on DM on Twitter, he said, hey, I'm really struggling right now, and I just wanted to like reach out and let you know that I'm here, but I am having a hard time. And I said, what can I do? Is there anything that I can do to help you? And he said, just keep being my friend, right? And it's like I only know this guy from the Biscuits, right? It's like
Right.
we're not like friends from outside of the Biscuits. He's just a fan, right? But he's a fan that is is kind of well known, and he's a community leader, and everyone looks up to him, and he's struggling right now through multiple goes in rehab, multiple slip ups, and like, been sober for 4 months 2 days ago, right? And the whole community's rallying around this dude. And I do consider him my friend because we talk all the time, and I want him to be healthy. I want this dude to get to 2 years of sobriety and know that it's in the past.
Hmm.
And it's hard. That first year is really, really hard. And
For sure.
and there's triggers and things happen, and you break up with your girlfriend and you go out on tour, and and somebody gives you a little bit of ketamine, and you think it's okay because ketamine's being studied for depression at Johns Hopkins. So how bad could it be? Yada yada yada. You're back doing heroin, right? And
Yeah.
that's not we've never done heroin in our band. Nobody's ever done heroin. Like, we just
Hmm.
like part of the thing about the Biscuits is there was a line that never got crossed. That's one of the reasons we're all alive and we're all still
Yeah.
here, and still healthy. But our fans cross that line a lot. It's like for us, whatever I can do to help a fan that's hurting, I'm gonna do, right. It's like, is it does it take extra time in my day to just say, hey man, you want to come out to the show? I got you. It doesn't cost me anything. It doesn't cost me any time. And it's something that, like you say, here we are 5 years later, and you still feel grateful about it, right? And that's just like of one of probably thousands of interactions that I've had with fans that are like that, right? And but it's too easy to be nice to people. It's just too easy to be kind and to be accessible, and I think a lot of people in the music scene feel like they can't be accessible, because if you're accessible, you're not a real rock star. Like, real rock stars aren't accessible. You have to be like how Fish is or whatever. You're not like,
Right.
they're insulated and they're like, oh, and
Rock stars are
to,
accessible. Divas are not.
right. And I think like there's other bands out there that kind of take that Fish route of like non-accessibility, like younger bands right now that are kind of take that route. But like, for me, I always was more impressed with the people that took the other route. This is a community. We're all in this together. This
Hmm.
isn't like this isn't like the band is special and the fans aren't. The fans, there's a company called Insomniac. They do Electric Daisy Carnival, EDC, like the huge electronic music festivals. And when they put out their lineups, was always impressed with this. They put out their lineups. They don't list the headliners at the top in big print and like the smaller bands smaller. They do
Hmm.
all 400 bands in alphabetical order. You have to look through this whole entire thing where 400 bands from the smallest to the biggest are mixed in throughout. You want to find out who the biggest acts are there, you've got to surf through this thing. And then at the very bottom, every lineup says one line, it says, and of course, our headliner, the fans, right?
Ah, that's
And
great.
like, that's the way that I am. Like, the fans are the headliner, right? Like, if the Disco Biscuits play in the woods and there's no one there to see us,
Do
did
they
it
make
really
a
happen?
sound?
Right? Exactly. It's like, it's like it's nothing
Yeah.
without the fans. We are nothing without you. And so, to be able to find ways to express that gratitude that we have, right? And it's like, gratitude is the attitude, right? Like, the
Hmm.
more that you can express gratitude or even feel gratitude, the better your life is going to be. We know this, like, right? There's certain things that create happiness, right? Like, one of them is forgiveness, reconciliation, right? If you have an issue with somebody, like, there was a whole thing recently on Fantasy Tour that came out that they say Joey, our coach who's writing songs with us, used to be our accountant back in the 08, 09, and he embezzled funds, right? And it's like a little bit like, and they're like, how can this band be friends with somebody that stole from them or something. And actually, he's like the biggest dancer in the front row, and he was
Mm.
writing our songs, and he also embezzled funds, or embezzled, like stole a couple
Right.
dollars, whatever it was. But they said somebody wrote, "This guy's amazing. He's like a combination of Mickey Hart's father, Robert Hunter, and Antelope Greg. Antelope Greg, rest in peace. Antelope Greg
Yep.
was a rail head
Hmm. The original one.
at, at the Fish that I only know as a positive person. A lot of people have had negative interactions with him out on the
Mm.
rail, of him being protective over his space. There's a lot of stories of him being a horrible person. But I'm in the Disco Biscuits, and he always treated me with respect
Hmm.
and with kindness. And for my group of friends at Fish are all really sad this week, because we all just found out that Antelope Greg passed away this week. But that's as an aside. People are like, how can you let this Joey person back in? And what I would like the fans to know is, first of all, how can we not? Like, how can we not forgive somebody that made a mistake, in their youth, right? Like, this is 15 years ago. He made a mistake. It was in the thousands of dollars, not tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands. It was cash. It was like tour float cash that like got
Yeah.
misappropriated, whatever. I don't even know that it was intentional. The point is, we can hold a grudge forever, and then that's on us, right? Like, you're holding a grudge, that's on you.
Hmm.
Doesn't mean anything to him. That's just making you unhappy, right? You're mad at somebody still. Like, there's
Yeah.
anger inside of you, right? So
Drinking poison
forgiveness.
doesn't hurt the other person.
Right. So forgiveness is about you. Reconciliation is about the relationship, right? But you don't have to reconcile with somebody to forgive them, right? You can forgive somebody of what they've done in the past and still have no relationship with them. But the forgiveness
Hmm.
is where you let go of the grudge. And there's studies that are, studies about happiness, that forgiveness is a major part of happiness, right? And so for us, being able to forgive Joey was one thing, right? And then being able to reconcile with him was another. And then, like, the arc of the story is incredible, because he's really been um, a huge catalyst towards, the successes that we're having right now. So, like, it's a real story of redemption. It's like beyond. It's like one of the greatest rock and roll redemption stories of all time. Guy steals some money, gets fired, loses his job, gets excommunicated from the community for 3 years, eventually reconciled, slowly works his way back into the inner circle of the band, and then ends up as the songwriter, right?
Hmm.
And then and the coach and the person that's keeping the band on track and making sure that the shows are great every night. It's really a remarkable it's a remarkable story that I feel like, somebody's doing a documentary about the Biscuits right now, and I kind of am like telling the guy, like, this is the story. It's
Right.
like this, like the band, like there's all kinds of stuff with the band, but like, this is one of the most interesting things that's ever happened. But it's all about it's all about you know being, staying happy,
Yeah.
reconciliation, forgiveness, kindness, and back to how this started, gratitude, right?
Hmm.
And the more gratitude that you can have, you can feel, you can be present with, and that you can express, whether it's privately or publicly, the better your life is going to be. Right. And we could probably
Absolutely.
stop right on gratitude. Right. This could be the end point, is just me saying it. I am so grateful for every time you showed up on the rail, and just went crazy out there and put the energy to us, because that, we feel it, and it drives us, right? It drives the moments that, all the good moments that we have are coming from that exchange of energy, right? And so I do have an immense amount of gratitude for, just for the band, for John, and for Aaron, and for Alan, and for, our managers, and our agents, of course. But, more than anything in the world, I have gratitude for the fans, and, being able to show that to the fans and express it, and find different ways to pay them back for what they have done for us and me and my life, um, that's, that's like a blessing to me.
And it translates, man. I can feel it, I can hear it. And there's a little phrase that I've coined, kind of, that I use in within this podcast and other things. I've really delved into mental health and make videos and talk about it. It's a conversation that needs to be in the forefront, and it's important. And something I always say is happiness is a lovely occurrence, but positivity is a state of mind.
That's right. That's a good
And
statement. I like that.
and you just seem, yeah, you seem happy, but you just seem positive about everything.
Well,
You seem positive
it's
about,
funny you should say that because we are living in a bubble of positivity right now. That's
for
the
sure.
phrase that we have. Our phrase that we have right now that the fans have picked up on, and
Uh,
there's tons of memes about it, and people are putting bubbles into their like Twitter names and everything. We are in a bubble of positivity, for better or for worse. We are surrounded by positivity. We're surrounded by positive people. We don't have any space for negativity in our lives right now. There are some people out there who try to throw negativity at us for one reason or another. Sometimes it's just kind of their crumbling mentally, and their only way of expressing that is in kind of throwing negativity to people online or whatever it is. And I've seen people having mental breakdowns, and it manifests in just like, like relentless negativity towards me. I don't have space for negativity in my life right now.
mhm.
I can't um I can't try to like pander to negativity. Rather, like, we're in a bubble of positivity, and everybody's welcome. Please come join our bubble of positivity. If you're a fan of other bands and you've been hearing a lot about the Disco Biscuits lately, I was just on Jam Cruise, and every 5 steps somebody would stop me to say, I'm not like really a big Biscuits person, but you can't help but notice the buzz is crazy. I'm coming to my first show in Texas. I'm coming to my first show in Atlanta in a couple of weeks. People are coming to check out what the hype is about. And, like you say, the hype is about a community that's just overflowing with positive energy right now. And that's how it is now. And that's how we intend to keep it. It's every night's going to be better than the last, and every night's going to be more positive than the last. And we're going to keep it going for as long as we possibly can.
The bubble of positivity is what brought me back.
That's right. You're back.
It's
He's
I'm
back.
here. I'm here. I'm in it.
It's so great.
Yeah, no, it feels good to be back. It feels good to be able to communicate with you as you are now and as I am now.
Yeah,
It's
look
it's
at us.
it's yeah, look at us. Who would have thought? But
I
in
just want to say you've got a real Robert De Niro kind of thing going on. Has anybody ever told you that before?
no.
It kind of like a little bit like Robert De Niro. You've got like a whole, like a young De Niro kind of a look going. It's a compliment. Yeah.
I'll tell
You
I
know,
appreciate that. The
this whole
hair
time I'm like, this whole time I've been like, who's Renzetti? And he's reminding me of somebody, and it just snapped. I was like, man, this guy's got De Niro vibes going on.
that's
I
a
don't know.
that's a hefty compliment. I appreciate that. Um
Yeah,
But yeah, I like kind of ending this on gratitude, and you and I clearly can talk for hours, and we'll do another one of these hopefully sooner than later. But
would love that.
what I'd love to do as just a way to end it is give you complete open floor, open space, whether it's to your fellow musicians, to fans, to friends, to family, whoever, anyone, everyone. If there's one thing that Mark wants to share about mental health, about anything, about whatever you want, what's the one thing that you would want to share with the world right now?
Well, it's like what we were touching on earlier. It's like if you're struggling, go get help, because there's light at the end of the tunnel. there's positivity on the other side of the negativity. And there's a lot of people out there that are struggling right now. It's been the last couple of years were some of the most difficult years that collectively the world has had to go through in probably 50 to 100 years. And it affected people mentally in a big way. And, you know, and whether it's depression, whether it's anxiety, whether it's substance abuse, whatever the thing is that you're struggling with, um, there's hope. There's hope that you can get past it and your life can be better. You have to put in the work to get there. It starts with intention, and then it continues with the work, and it's a different journey for everybody. But um, you can do it. Like, you can go. Like, you can get from rock bottom to you know, a picture of mental and physical health. And, for me, I'm starting a physical health journey right now that I haven't been on in a couple of years. And I hope that I'm able to stick with it through being on tour and playing 85 shows this year. And I've got my accountability partner, and I intend on coming out on the other side of that, physically the best that I've ever been, and mentally the best I've ever been. And I've been at rock bottom. You've been at rock bottom. And, I just would want to say to the people out there that are having a hard time, don't give up. You know, there's always a brighter day ahead.
That's great. And yeah, I I've I'm sure that you're going to come out on the other side of this journey, and hopefully I'm lucky enough to witness it. Hopefully in some capacity I'm lucky enough to be a part of it, and hopefully, I can help you in ways that you've helped me in the past. And
I'm looking forward to that. I will be in touch with you to talk about nutrition and
yeah,
talk about, what that plan looks like, what it looks
I
like to be able to do it against all odds, against the adversity that you're, not a lot of sleep, long travel days, long days
mhm.
of 12 hours of work every day on the road. And, but it has to happen. It's all of these things have to happen. And, like, mentally, I'm there right now. Like, physically, I'd like to be able to run 13 miles again. I was at 8 earlier in the year, and I'm gonna get there. I know intention never means a thing until you act, and it's time to act. So,
Exactly.
if you're out there and you want to make changes, let's make them together.
And I will it will genuinely be my pleasure to give back however I can. You've given me a lot through my life. Like I said, I've known you basically half my life, and you were a pivotal and instrumental part of the beginning of my journey, not even just into music, but into life and exploration and finding myself. And throughout my whole journey, you've always paid attention. You've always sent me a message here and there that said, dude, I'm proud of you, or I'm watching you. And I've always felt that from you. And I'm so appreciative of the fact that just like the other guy you mentioned, I may be a fan, but I appreciate the fact that I can call you a friend. And
Appreciate that as well.
I look so forward to talking in every capacity moving forward in terms of nutrition and health and wellness, and can't wait to do another one of these episodes. And I'm so appreciative of the time, and I'm just grateful and thankful for you being you and being present in my life the way you have been. So thank you for all of it.
Thank you, Mike. And let's when I hit my goals, let's do a follow up.
Absolutely. And I can't wait. And when you guys come out to play Dylan in Mishawaka, I'm out here now. So hopefully
Great.
we can see each other and have a nice hug and
Yeah,
see
no
how
doubt.
just how well we're doing. But I always end these by saying something to the people, and I say it to you too. I believe in you in every single thing that you do in this life, and I love you. And wherever we go from here, let's do it together.
Thank you. Thanks for your time. Appreciate it.
Appreciate you, Brownie. I will talk to you soon.
Great. Thanks,
See you
Mike.
later.